I'm David Zuckerman, your Lieutenant Governor. Welcome, viewers. As part of our Pride Month activities, I'm really excited to be hosting this roundtable conversation with 4 LGBTQIA activists to learn more about the work they're doing and ways we can support the community and hear the ideas for building a more inclusive Vermont. I'm really pleased to have them joining me today. I'm going to introduce them and then have them say a little bit about themselves. We've got Lisa Carton from Queer Connect in Bennington, Brenda Churchill from the LGBTQIA Alliance, HB Lozito from Out in the Open in Brattleboro, and Ezra Totten, who is a former page at the State House and is a student at Burlington High School. And I want to mention that these guests are here to engage in this discussion about policy and resources. Their participation does not constitute a political endorsement. We've been hosting many of these roundtable conversations with experts in a range of different fields and issues, and we want to make sure these conversations are open to all and that all are welcome to participate, and that political endorsements are not a caveat to participation. I'd like to start by inviting each of my guests to introduce themselves and share just a little bit about the work they're doing to support the LGBTQIA in their community and across Vermont. And I'm going to start with Brenda, who I see a lot at the State House. You do work for a statewide organization, and so we're going to start with you. If you can give us a top-level view of some of the work taking place at the statewide level and what you're hearing. So, Brenda, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure. Thank you, David. Good to be here. I wanted to mention that I've got 5 nonprofit organizations that I am responsible for, and 6, which is Lisa Carton's Queer Connect down in Bennington. With a nod to HB, we've got Out in the Open in Brattleboro. Coming back upstate, we've got Rainbow Umbrella of Central Vermont. In Montpelier, we have the Pride Center of Vermont in Burlington, along with, oh, help me out here.
Outright.
I'm drawing a blank. Outright Vermont, absolutely. Can't ever forget Outright Vermont, and Vermont Cares, all in the Chittenden County area. What I provide is a report on what is going on in the State House, what may be important to the LGBTQ community that I represent, and then I will often testify when and where I can and provide basically information that is germane to whatever bill it is that we're passing. Most recently, I worked with the Older Vermonters bill that hopefully will get passed and signed here shortly, providing a perspective to include all of the LGBTQ community in language there, which was supported through Act 1 when we passed that and was signed into law last year. There's a lot of things that happen in the State House, and part of them now is done online, so it's a lot easier to follow along. And there's many different committees that are working on many things. And if it affects a Vermonter, then we will look at it. And of course, it affects LGBTQ folks in the community as well. That's about it for now. The activity is ramping up, and bills are getting passed, and committees are talking. So it's good. It's really good to have access to everything for once, because you can't be in more than one place at a time.
Right. And if there are, you're in the Lieutenant Governor's office quite a bit, visiting, keeping me up to date. If someone wanted more information about the work that's going on in Montpelier, what's the best way for them to be in touch with either you or the organizations in some way if they're learning about you?
Thanks. We're on Facebook, and that's not hard to find. It's really a long name, LGBTQIA Alliance of Vermont. I'm all over there, so anybody can reach out and find me pretty darn easily, I've found out, and I'm happy to answer questions directly. Any of the organizations that I mentioned have a way to get a hold of me, and often they do. They'll send me referrals or things or people that I can talk to. So,
perfect. No, that's very helpful, and I'll maybe ask that of the others. So you may want to be ready with that information, other friends and guests. Thank you, Brenda. And earlier this month, just a few weeks back, was the 2nd annual Bennington Pride Parade. It was held under some very different conditions because of the COVID pandemic that we're all working our way through day by day. And this year it was a car parade from Bennington up to Manchester and Rutland and back. And Lisa, you have been central in organizing this event. Obviously, it was probably a huge task to shift gears, as it were, and do it in a new way. But it was quite amazing. And you've been working with this community in Southern Vermont. And can you tell us a little bit about how Queer Connect came to be and what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So Queer Connect is actually only a little over a year old. Just kind of hard to believe in a lot of ways, actually. We started last year, and within 3 months of forming Queer Connect and becoming a nonprofit, we held our very first ever, extremely historic Pride in Bennington, which was phenomenally successful. It was huge. It was amazing. It was really pretty incredible. The momentum from that pretty much shot us through the next 6 months. We had lots of events. And I don't know the number, but we had probably 10 to 12 events, probably more actually. And then what happened, that's been really interesting and difficult actually, is we came into the new year and we're really planning this whole week this year for June 1 through 6 to have a whole week of Pride, and we had almost all of our planning in place. Actually, literally had almost all of it planned way ahead of time, and then COVID hit. Screeching halt. So we had so much planned that right away, and so many people were begging us, please don't say it's going to be canceled, especially young people. We never canceled it. We always said from the get-go, we're going to immediately look to, right off the bat, how we can transfer everything online or to completely safe ways. So we had a little bit of a head start because we just always were kind of committed that we're not going to cancel it. Nothing can cancel Pride. That's been kind of can't cancel Pride. So we did get a little bit of a jump on it. Of course, then we all know how things ended up, and things came to a screeching halt. We lost a lot of volunteers, almost all of them. It was really difficult. We're just starting to pick up now. We're just starting to pick up. The car caravan, I'm really grateful. It went really well. It got us some new volunteers. People were really happy. I was very happy with how many people showed up for that. And I actually think that it points to next year, even though we hopefully will have our traditional Pride back, I think we're going to keep a car caravan, because to me, it was really essential to be driving out into the outskirts in the country and seeing families that a lot of them wouldn't even come into Bennington. It's not really their town. But I felt like that was a really important sort of Vermont homegrown rural feel that doesn't happen here enough at all, so I'm pretty committed to keeping that, as well as the more traditional components of Pride. So next year is probably going to be triply huge, because I know we do a lot more than Pride and Queer Connect, and I know I don't want to take up too much time, but one of the newest developments is, and I'll probably speak to this a little bit with some of the questions we get into, but we finally are forming a committee to do educational outreach in town by locals. Outright has been great. Pride Center comes down, but there's definitely a need for a lot more education in our town and trainings at lots of different community levels. So we're in the process of doing that too. And anyone who wants information, we have a new website. It's queerconnectbennington.com, and we just ported it over, and we're having Prideograms is our big, for Pride Month. You can buy a Prideogram and send someone a personalized handwritten message to celebrate Pride, whatever your message is. And we have musicians singing them too, so you get to choose. Either we'll mail it, or you can have someone call and sing, and it's really cool.
Cool. Wow. Well, thank you. And we'll definitely get back to some of those issues. And, I remember as we were organizing around civil unions and marriage equality, as more people, and it was really hard for a lot of people. I heard these stories, but as people came out to their families and their friends, and there became a larger and larger community of folks coming out, it built the opportunity and the safety in the community for more to do so. And it sounds like down in Bennington, you were just saying, driving around the county, the number of families coming out, the number of people supportive, I think that shows that there's been a shift in some of the cultural reality of those who maybe were more negative or and are getting better. There's still challenges out there, but it sounds like the parade was really well received. That's nice to hear. Our next guest, I've known Ezra for a very long time through his family, and he was a page at the State House a couple of years ago, student at Burlington High School, where he's a leader in the Gender and Sexuality Alliance. So I'm wondering if you could share some issues unique to LGBTQIA teens and the work that GSA is doing in that school, and if you're working with any other schools. Thanks, Ezra. Welcome.
Yeah. So I'm Ezra. I use he, him pronouns. I'm 16. I'm a junior at BHS, and one of the co-leaders of my school is GSA. At the age of 8, I started questioning my gender, and then at the age of 12, I came out as transgender to my parents. And then last summer, right before my sophomore year, my staff advisor of our GSA came to me and another student in my grade and asked us to lead the GSA. He didn't want it to be teacher-led. He wanted it to be student-led. He thought it would be more powerful if it was student-led. So we created our GSA, and we met twice a week. It was great. And then halfway through, we didn't have much to talk about, but then halfway through the year, we started noticing that a lot of students who weren't in the GSA were throwing around the word gay as if it was a joke. And so we talked to each other, and then we talked to the GSA, and we came up with the idea to go to our teachers and the administration and tell them, look, this is happening. It's not creating a safe environment. We need change. We got outright involved. They started helping us. And then, unfortunately, COVID hit, and we weren't able to go to the teachers. So we decided to put it on hold, and next year we're going to go full swing. Beginning of the school year, we're going to the administration, and we're going to talk. I talked at our school board meeting after a letter was sent to the school board asking teachers not to teach some of the students what being transgender is. I've gotten our gender neutral locker room placed in my school. So that's kind of what the GSA at my school does. We're trying to make BHS a little safer and a little more welcoming for LGBTQ students. We have a flag hanging in our cafeteria as well.
And do you know if there are other groups like yours at some other high schools around the state that you are able to connect with or share ideas with, or is this not that common?
There's quite a few GSAs throughout the state. There's a yearly get together that Outright does for school GSAs to come together and plan and talk and see how each can help each other out. We haven't really been able to reach out. We haven't really reached out to any other school GSAs in the state this year, but that is something we're looking forward to. We've also been trying to, both of the middle schools in Burlington have GSAs, and we were gonna try to reach out to the middle schools to get them to come up to the high school to try and help the 8th graders transition a little better into high school and the high school GSA. But then COVID-19 hit, and we weren't able to do that. But that is part of our plan, is that we want to reach out to the middle schools and try to form a good group of the high school and the 2 middle school GSAs working together.
Great, thank you. I really appreciate it, Ezra. Next, I'm excited to hear from HB and learn more about the work Out in the Open is doing to build community and support for LGBTQIA people, especially in the more rural parts of our state. I think these kinds of issues, there's often a discussion of, there's Chittenden County, and then there's the rest of the state around incomes, around cultures, around a lot of things. And the reality is folks in the LGBTQIA community face challenges in every corner of the state. And I'm just curious, some of the work you're doing. So HB, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, David. Really happy to be here with all of you. We've got some good representation from the southern part of the state on the panel today. Happy to join my colleague Lisa from Bennington. And yeah, so the focus of our work at Out in the Open is on building power of rural LGBTQ folks. So we have been down here in Brattleboro since 2012. Folks may know us as Green Mountain Crossroads was the former name of our organization, and we changed it last summer. And yeah, a bulk a large amount of the work that we've been doing for the past several years is letting folks know, we are in every community in this state. We're in every rural community, I believe in the United States, and that rural LGBTQ people have sort of always been here. We've always been a part of our communities. And yeah, we do a lot of work dispelling the myth that those of us who are LGBTQ can only live happy, safe, powerful and productive lives in urban areas and cities, and we know that's not true. So we work, as I was saying, primarily here in Brattleboro, but we also work with folks throughout the state as well as throughout northern New England and around the US. So we, are definitely an integral part of the Vermont community, but have found when we started doing this work, we're one of the few organizations in the United States that had a particular focus on ruralness and LGBTQ issues. So we draw folks to us in our work from all over the US. And that's been an interesting side effect of our work under COVID-19 is that we've actually expanded that work and network to, folks from Arizona and Oklahoma and sort of all over who are finding us and participating with us virtually, who never would have or would have had a difficult time coming here in person with us. So we think of ourselves primarily as a movement building organization. What we're trying to do is politicize every single LGBTQ person living in a rural area to get them on board with, ending all kinds of oppression and building collective liberation for all people is really the core of our work. We do that in a bunch of different ways, as Brenda knows from working with us for a little bit. We have a lot of different things going on. I'll highlight just a few. One is our annual Out in the Open Summit, which will be different this year, obviously under COVID, as with all things. And that's 3 days, folks from all over the US coming together to do partially what I tend to describe as rural living skills, right? Chainsaw safety, tofu making, goat care, and cheese making. We have a lot of folks that participate with us who are coming from the farming and ag and land working world. And then some things that are discussion based about, everything from prison abolition to class experiences to how do you find dates in the woods. And so that's been a really powerful experience for us coalescing around what is this experience of ruralness as an LGBTQ person. We do a lot of work around health justice and building access for our folks, a lot of work around anti-racism, collaborating with great organizations down here like the Root Social Justice Center and Lost River Racial Justice. We've worked for the past few years on what we call a rural racial justice organizing study group, helping folks look again at what are the models of organizing in rural areas that we have to use. As with information about our identities, a lot of the models we have about organizing come from cities and urban places. So trying to get at what works in our rural community. Peer support, do a lot of peer support groups for different parts of identities from our community, a lot of that kind of work. We have an oral history project about the Andrews Inn. There's actually a poster for the Andrews Inn right behind me. And so Andrews Inn was a gay bar and community space in Bellows Falls in the 70s and 80s. And actually later this month or in the next couple months, we are gonna be placing a state of Vermont historic marker at Andrews Inn, which is very exciting acknowledgement of that part of the community and history. The last thing I'll mention at this moment, we've started doing a lot of mutual aid work since COVID-19, as a lot of folks have. And last week, we launched a new mutual aid fund for QT BIPOC, so Black and Indigenous people of color folks who are also LGBTQ, as well as white folks who are part of our community who are in need of direct financial mutual aid. And folks can find out more about the fund at weareoutintheopen.org/mutual aid. And that's where you can find out more information about us on the whole as well.
Wow, your plate is full.
Yes.
You do a lot. And I was really interested to hear, before George Floyd's murder, sounds like you were already doing a lot of work across different injustices and building bridges. And that's really exciting to hear. Wow, you all are inspiring with the work you're doing and with the support you're doing and really helping many folks in such a wide range of issues. So thank you for that. It's amazing to hear all these activities and the variety of work you're doing. And and clearly, sadly, not surprised that there's still a lot of work to be done for community safety, and as well as events like HB just talked about just living in rural areas and some of the day-to-day things we got to do. In 2020, there was a Gallup poll that reported that 5.3% of Vermont's population identifies as LGBTQIA, and this actually makes Vermont one of the highest per capita represented states in the country. We've, I think, historically led the way on some issues. We all know there's more to go, but sometimes when we lead on issues, we also then become a place that folks want to live. And so maybe more folks feel comfortable coming out, and therefore in polls like this, we have higher returns. Who knows? You all might know better than me. And as we get into the next question, I want to remind those who are watching that if you have a question or an idea, feel free to post it in the comments, and we're going to do our best to bring in comments from Facebook into the chat box for me to bring into the conversation. And I'm going to shift to healthcare. I've been a longtime supporter and activist for a universal healthcare system, but we don't have that. And I believe we need to acknowledge, obviously, that health is more than physical health. It's also mental health, equally important. And we need to work to end the stigma of accessing services, either physical or mental health care. And certainly with some of the trans community, there's a lot of healthcare questions and procedures and options that sometimes are covered, sometimes aren't by healthcare plans. So let's talk about healthcare, the specific needs of the LGBTQIA community, ideas you have for keeping the community safe and healthy, and ways that healthcare needs to be addressed. And I'm open to whoever wants to chime in on this topic.
I'll jump in, David.
Great, go ahead, Brenda.
One of the things that I think that drives healthcare is access. And right now, Burlington has perhaps the most medical professionals that deal with trans folks like myself. And I think we need to get an emphasis in training and teaching more healthcare providers to get into rural communities. I don't know of anything outside of Chittenden. I know there are healthcare providers that will identify themselves as LGBTQ friendly, but especially trans gender healthcare needs to have folks that don't travel 3 hours to get to Burlington just to see someone who is rated that way. So I think in the training and teaching aspect, I think we need to bring a lot more emphasis into that. And there is a track, I believe, at UVM Medical Center, or between the university and the medical center, that does address that. But of course, getting folks to stay and go out into the rural communities would be critical. We actually updated laws within the state through Medicaid to provide health care for younger trans folks without the hassle or stigma that older medical doctrine used to put people through. Certainly, it's easier now for our youth to be able to access, our trans youth to be able to access health care than it was, and is supported through our statutes and Medicaid itself. So these are good things and tiny steps, and hopefully we'll get there eventually.
Does anybody else have something they want to chime in on this topic? Lisa, I saw you just unmuted your microphone.
I could probably say something about everything, believe me. But
that's what this is about. Share, yes.
Yeah, right. I'm happy to hear things from throughout the state. But I do know that in Bennington, I get regular feedback from people about the need for doctors and our hospital healthcare workers at every level for them to be inclusive. We don't even have basic inclusivity here. I've lived in Bennington now, it's hard to believe, 28 years. I forgot that many LGBTQ people actually have healthcare that's queer focused. It actually happens. I know this because I used to live where I was aware of that. And literally, the bar is kind of right now in Bennington. There's some wonderful people doing great work at the hospital, and and if it wasn't for them, we would virtually have nothing. It hasn't been easy for them, but they're persistent and they're doing some great work. Yet I still get regularly from the community. It's just the other day, someone mentioned, like, what's the deal? Like, even the forms they're using doesn't include us. It's pervasive here. It's very rare that we are included here. There's little pockets. But there's a lot to be done here in terms of education and outreach at every level. Just in terms of people feeling comfortable to talk to even their primary care physician and tell the truth about their life's experience. It's shockingly not happening.
Can you, for a second, give examples? I mean, I'm thinking, obviously, are you male or female versus saying they and other options, but what are some of the concrete things that folks who maybe aren't part of the community may not even, they're oblivious to, myself included, that could learn in some of the ways that we need to help be more inclusive?
I know you guys have lots of examples of this too, but literally just the other day, there was a woman who identifies as a lesbian saying that there was nowhere that she could say that her wife was the parent of their children. And then in the school systems, the kids also are having a really difficult time. They're looking for daycare, and there's you know, they're having to educate wherever they go that yes, you know, two women can get married, two men can get married, and not all families look the same. And it's like their everyday existence is that.
Anybody else want to chime in on this topic? HB, I see you smiling.
Yeah, we do a lot of work around healthcare. Happy to jump in here. I'll start out by saying I think, you know, especially for trans community and all, you know, cis LGBTQ people as well, I think, you know, I'd love to see the healthcare community acknowledge past and present harm to our community. And I think, to me, that would go a long way in us being able to build trust together. I think, yeah, there's been a lot of harm levied against our community and many communities by folks in healthcare. And I think that would be really helpful first step. Wanted to shout out our friends at the Pride Center who have a project called the Vermont Diversity Health Project that lists LGBTQ competent healthcare providers throughout the state. So if folks are not familiar with that, you can find that on the Pride Center's website. They're doing a lot of great work around healthcare as well. And I think for me, you know, it's like, we know that LGBTQ people are a part of every community. And so that means we're having every experience that folks are having who are struggling with healthcare. I'd love to see a deeper embrace of harm reduction, things like safe use and safe injection sites. We have a lot of folks in Windham County who are experiencing opioid use disorder and those types of things. So I think we can do a lot around that. I'd love to see more money for peer support and respite. A lot of folks in this community, I'll shout out the Hive Mutual Support Network down here in Brattleboro, doing a lot of really excellent work about alternatives to involuntary hospitalization, and how are we truly supporting folks that are in our community that need spaces to be, to heal themselves. And I think, you know, Brenda and I and a bunch of other folks in the state did a lot of good work with Vermont Legal Aid in the past year, getting Vermont Medicaid to update their gender affirmation procedures, things that will be covered under Vermont Medicaid. I think there's a lot of, there's a long way to go on that. I think we made some really good shifts in the past year. But I think we need an overall shift in thinking about how are specifically trans folks, but all of us, able to talk for ourselves about what it is, the care that we need. You know, we still are required to receive letters from therapists and psychologists in order to access care. There's a lot we can do to break down the gatekeeping of things that are there. And I know, you know, one big stumbling block in the Medicaid conversation was also what's considered elective and what's considered cosmetic and what's actually covered, and things that we consider and are, you know, deeply essential to our folks staying alive are considered cosmetic, and we need to work to fix that.
Well, thank you. Ezra, did you want to chime in real quick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking from a student's, like a youth perspective, we take the Youth Risk Behavior Survey every few years, and it always says that LGBTQ youth are at a greater risk for mental health and all of that than our cis straight classmates. And I mean, it's a big thing. We're almost like 4 or 5 times more likely to have mental health issues. So having school counselors who are more equipped to deal with LGBTQ youth in the schools to help students, and more sex ed in school. We maybe have like one class about LGBTQ sex ed, or like one class about sex ed, and in like a 2-minute part of that sex ed class, you get taught a tiny amount of LGBTQ sex ed. So having better sex ed in schools and school counselors who can help LGBTQ youth access more healthcare programs would be great.
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion around SROs in school, and I wonder whether those resources could be better spent with the community, whether it's mental health, whether it's different educators or more educators. Quick 2-second answer on what you think about that, Ezra, as the student of the bunch.
Yeah. I would like to see more help with LGBTQ youth. In the state of Vermont, trans people our healthcare is protected. Last year, I was going for my top surgery, and I was denied by my insurance company because of my age. So I had everything I needed. I had letters, I had everything, and the only thing that got me denied was my age, and that was because I had a federal. My healthcare plan was governed by the federal government, not the state government. And so what I ended up helping with was getting a amendment to a bill that said that insurance companies cannot deny surgeries regardless of anyone's age. So that was put in place, and so luckily trans healthcare is protected. But there are people who can still be discriminated against because of federal guidelines.
Yeah.
David, were you talking about school resource officers?
Well, I was
who are
talking
in
about that.
schools?
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to chime in for a second on that, then we'll get to the next topic. Yeah. HB, what do you think on that?
Oh, I just wanted to clarify that that's what you meant by SROs.
I did.
I mean, I do have a lot of thoughts about that. I am in favor of the Racial Justice Alliance, who's calling for officers to be removed from schools and reallocate those resources other places. So
Yeah,
I will stop there with that comment, but just wanted to clarify.
Well, no, that's helpful. And that was what I was asking about. Sorry, I wasn't clear using the acronym SRO. It gets into political minds sometimes. We use too many acronyms. So folks with firsthand experience, Ezra, you were just talking about different policies and adjusting policies. And Brenda and Ezra, you've both spent considerable time in the State House. And obviously, HB and Lisa, you have a pretty deep understanding of what's needed to build a more inclusive state. What can we do to get more LGBTQIA representation in Montpelier? And what are some of the policies you'd like to see addressed? So sort of 2 pieces to the question. And I did want to start with Brenda, having done so much work down there, but anybody else is also welcome to chime in. Brenda, your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you, David. I'm part of the Fair and Impartial Policing Commission that Captain Gary Scott invited me to last year. And we're certainly working on all aspects of policing with respect to people of color. But I bring an LGBTQ opinion and flavor to all the discussions that we have. They are looking at revamping training rules now. And this may be a little bit off the topic, but I think that being inclusive in any of the training and making sure that it's covered through law enforcement, that we get that buy-in. I try to look at my role in the State House, and I wanted to thank HB for reminding me that it is a team effort, and I may show up there to represent the community, but many of our organizations respond, and when I ask for letters of support or testimony, everybody comes out and does that. We currently have 3 trans-identified people who are running for state office. And while again, I won't endorse or talk too much about them, I'm really excited that these three folks have stepped forward. I look to Christine Hallquist's leadership in the last couple of years, and I think it's fantastic that more folks are running that represent the transgender community. And having a presence in the State House and having been there now for almost 3 years, I'm just amazed at the progress that we have made, and at the fact that we've enjoyed, getting our time on the stand to testify and bring the community into the legislative process. And I think more folks that get elected, more folks have to realize that it's a people-oriented process, and anybody can run. I just got elected to the Democratic Convention as a trans delegate. I think that was the first time in the Vermont Democratic Party that that's happened. I'm running for select board in Bakersfield, and that's where it starts. You can get in with grassroots efforts. You can certainly show up at the State House and be happy to show everybody around.
I think, Brenda, you touched on a lot of things there with grassroots organizing and getting people to call their legislators, no matter where you are in the state. Reaching out to your legislator, that's something I've really advocated for as an organizer for 20 years and as lieutenant governor, trying to help people find their voice and how to use that voice effectively. And if, as Brenda just said, if there are issues that you care about and you talk to your legislator about them in a conversational way, it can really have an impact on what happens in Montpelier. And I'm going to turn to Ezra for a moment, who saw that for 6 weeks as a page, and also through knowing your parents and their involvement, what the impact of involvement can be, and sort of policy making, and maybe something you'd like to see addressed. You talked about a piece of policy just in your last remarks. Ezra, any thoughts?
Yeah. So as a page, you're not complete. Like, you're given some assignments. One of our assignments was to follow a House bill and a Senate bill, and we had to write a paper or like an essay for one of the one of our advisors as a passing the page program. And so that really got us into we also had to sit in on the committees when they were talking about the bills. So you sat in for committee and you listened and you saw what was happening. We were on the Senate floors, we were on the representative floor, listening to everything going on. And as a page, it's great. It was a great experience. I say people should go for it. It's for eighth graders in Vermont. Unfortunately, it's only one kid per family. So if you have a big family and one kid does it, none of the younger kids can do it. So that's one of the downsides, but it's a great program. And there's a lot of white kids who are in the program. You don't really see a lot of people of color or kids who are disabled or LGBTQ kids. It's a lot of white kids who are from mostly middle-class families. There's not a lot of diversity within the page program. And so I think pulling in a more diverse crowd for pages would really help getting more of a diverse body of representatives and senators, because a lot of the pages who are in the page program do go on to later in life run for some form of office. So if we made the page program a little bit more diverse and encourage people who sometimes wouldn't be into that kind of program, to encourage them to get into the program, because you see firsthand how laws are made in our state.
Yeah, sort of building for the future. That's really a great point. If either of the other two have something quick, we are running behind. So Lisa or HB, if you want to chime in quickly, and then we'll get to sort of our last bigger question, and then we actually already are wrapping in about 10 minutes. Do either Lisa or HB have something they want to throw in real quick?
I'll jump in with a couple quick things, which is we're very lucky to have members from our community who are part of the Windham County Delegation going into the State House. So that's wonderful. I'd love to see more programs like Emerge Vermont. I think a lot of folks, at least down here in Windham County, come out of that program and into the State House, but that doesn't, they have a sole focus on working with women candidates, which includes trans women, which is really great, but doesn't allow space for everyone in our community to participate in those kinds of pipelines. So more programs like that to get folks into the State House.
They're also focused on women Democrats, I believe.
Yes, accurate.
And there are people that are not Democrats who are members of the community, I assume. But
absolutely, yep. And then as far as bills to see, you know, we've done some work with Representative Emily Kornheiser, who's got a bill to decriminalize sex work that's working its way through the State House. Would love to see that in action. Universal health care, of course, lots of other stuff. There's actually one up right now to include Abenaki language alongside English on state signage. So would love to see that too. But a couple quick items.
Thank you. Lisa, anything critical, or can I move on to the next?
Keep on going.
All right. So I just want to make sure we celebrate the great news this week. The Supreme Court actually had a great decision today as well, but I'm going to focus on earlier this week, historic ruling protecting LGBTQ Americans from employment discrimination while marriage equality was the law of the land. In some states, the day you got married was the day you could lose your job. And so now that is no longer allowed. The Supreme Court decision, not even just 5-4, I believe it was 6-3, which is pretty strong in this direction given the makeup of the courts. And so there's maybe some hope for more inclusivity in the future while we're living in these relatively divisive times under this president. So these decisions come because of thousands of tiny actions that so many folks help make it possible. It builds the momentum to make it possible. So I want to each give you a minute, share something that brings you hope for your future and the future of LGBTQIA Vermonters. You could talk about the decision, you could talk about some event you've been at or some person that's told you something, whatever is just inspirational from your perspective around the hope for the future and the inspiration for the future. So HB, do you want to share me something here?
Sure. I will start by saying, to me, the joy is one of our organizational values, and I get and receive a lot of joy from my queer and trans identity and community. And I think, you know, I often say if being queer was a choice, I would choose it a million times over and over again. So I think our community often gives me a lot of hope. The things right now that are giving me a lot of hope and inspiration are the racial justice related uprisings that are sweeping the US and have been, you know, a part of the work we've all been doing for a long time. I think really powerful conversations about how are we truly creating community safety. Here we had a really powerful forum last night with our police chief where a lot of members of the LGBTQ community were talking in really important ways about let's deeply think about this together, as well as what's been happening up in Burlington with, you know, their city councils going late into the early morning. A lot of folks getting involved who haven't been involved before, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, they had about 1,000 people lined up for public comments. I think they continued in the next day and still probably couldn't get to everybody. Thank you so much, HB, and reach out with info and thoughts, and we'll try to, of course, promote all the websites for all the different organizations. Ezra, you've got the most future ahead of you, I think, of any of the five of us. So why don't you give us something, what gives you hope and excitement? And it's so great to see you.
I am 16, but I think something that does give me hope is a lot of the younger LGBTQ folks. There's a lot of younger kids who are coming out and who are showing up and fighting. So I mean, I'm still young. I'm still a youth, but I think more of the younger youth who are coming out and legislation that being passed to support and protect LGBTQ folks. The Supreme Court thing was as one of the big ones. I missed 3 days of school in October, and I drove down with a representative in the State House, and we went down to Washington, D.C., and I went and I was there on the day that they were hosting the hearing. and there was protests. I protested, and so just the amount of things that are happening in the world that are helping protect LGBTQ folks does give me some hope for the future that I can maybe leave Vermont one day. Sometimes things happen where Vermont seems like the only place I can live, and but this stuff that's being passed does give me hope that things will be better in the future.
Oh, that's exciting, and thank you. You also, really everybody on this program gives me some hope and inspiration, but you can call yourself Youth Ezra, but you are wise beyond your years. Brenda, is Vermont making progress? What makes you hopeful?
There are a lot of hopeful things, and as everybody must be aware that we've gotten through gender-neutral bathrooms, we've gotten third gender added to driver's licenses, we've done updates in Medicaid within the state as far as eligibility, and like Ezra pointed out, age discrimination not a factor now for private insurers. So when a decision like this comes down from the Supreme Court, not only is it a victory for folks who have been working so hard for this, but it is also a stark contrast to what has been happening in the United States, not so much in Vermont, but the violence against trans women of color has been horrendous. And I've got to say that this hopefully will take a step to bring more positivity to our overall social conscience. But who knows? We'll see. We need to make sure that trans healthcare is preserved in a way that makes sense. And I think that may be the next test of the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I saw a big rally in one of our cities of trans, I think particularly trans community of color. That was really impressive and heartening to see just recently. And so thank you, Brenda. And Lisa, we're going to wrap with your thought of hope and then my closing. And Lisa, hope. What do we got?
Thank you. I absolutely get hope from the young people in the community. And it's so nice to hear you, Ezra. And as a young person, you're saying that too, which is spectacular. I think, you know, we definitely need to support them more, but it wasn't very long ago that as a young person, I felt completely invisible. My voice wasn't heard, and I would leave things and I was active, and I'd leave going, I don't think anyone's listening. And I feel like that is one of the biggest things for Queer Connect is like the kids inspired me. That was what finally I woke up and I said, what am I doing? I've been here almost 30 years and there's nothing gay here. I can't take it anymore. I mean, I've said that a million times in 28 years. And bing, just start something. Oh, and it was young people who immediately came in and when COVID hit, guess what? It was young people who were back in town because they couldn't be in college across the country who called me and said, I'm here, I want to help. Thank you. Thank you, because everyone in town just kind of went and went into hibernation. It's young people. It's absolutely the young people. They're incredible. I could go on and on about that, but it gives me just not even just hope for the future. It's just filling my heart now. I needed that. I need to, our diversity is the thing. I so agree with what you said, HB. Like we're in a point now with that people are starting to wake up about racism, about the structural racism, about how that is related to sexism and heterosexism, and it's all connected, right? And how that's related to our power and control kind of culture and the rape culture and the police brutality, and it's all connected. And it's so inspiring for me to see people finally making connections, and the young people really get it. It's like, yes, yay.
Nice. I don't know anybody's ages in the group, but HB, I think you're maybe younger and closer to Ezra than the others of us. And I don't want to overwhelm just Ezra with youth leadership, but HB, you're not in high school, certainly, but also being a leader.
Far from high school. No, that'd be amazing. I am in high school. No, I am far from high school.
Okay, fair enough. But I didn't want to leave you out as a future and current leader of fewer years than some of the rest of us on this panel. I want to thank you all for the work you're doing, sharing your thoughts, sharing the work that you're doing, your personal experiences. I continue to learn, whether it's LGBTQIA issues, certainly Black Lives Matter issues. I think these are continuous paths for those of us who are not members of those communities and who have benefited from various privileges that society has put our way. And hopefully this conversation has expanded the opportunity for people who are watching to learn and hear things that you may have been unaware of, and also make sure that if you have thoughts or questions about these topics or any other topic, feel free to reach out to my campaign at info@zuckerman4vt.com. We can either help answer a question or about my views on issues, but also we can help connect you with any of these 4 guests or other guests that we've had on various roundtable conversations. We did hear the websites earlier in this broadcast as well. So please use the resources that are out there. These 4 folks are doing amazing work, and there's many, many others doing amazing work all over the state for policy changes, for support, for community education, and for a better future for Vermont. So we're happy to hear from you. They're happy to hear from you. And thank you everyone for joining us today. And thank you to this great panel.